Now, the Revelation Spiritual Home today celebrates 15 years of Indigenous African spiritual emancipation and freedom through prayer. The Spiritual Home is also celebrating a successful journey in the quest to restore practice, universal reality of spirituality, and also pray for peace ahead of the upcoming elections. We're joined now by Thembi Tulwana, the Revelation Spiritual Home Upper House member. Very good evening to you, and thank you so much for speaking to us.
Good evening, ma'am, and thank you for having us on your studio.
So you are celebrating 15 years of Indigenous African spiritual emancipation and freedom through prayer, but just give us a brief history of this. Where does it come from and how was it established?
Okay, the Revelation Spiritual Home was established 15 years ago, and its foundations are on spirituality, love, peace, and tolerance. And as we moved on, it became very important that our founder and leader had to teach us and lead us in the restoration of our spirituality as a Black people. So we have 15 years of spiritual restoration, 15 years whereby we understand where we come from as African people. Most specifically, when we had to look at our lives and ensure that we have all the success that we have taken from our parents, our ancestors, most specifically from our spirituality, because as a Black people, and in fact, each and every person has a spiritual side to them, whereby there are guiders who are going to be able to guide you accordingly in order for you to achieve what you've been set to achieve in life.
Okay, so that one can understand your values, your principles, your commandments, so to speak, a little bit more. I believe TRSH has a fellowship or followership of more than 3.5 million and 75 branches in the SADC area, Ireland, and the USA. So that's a very vast and disparate grouping of people. So who is the founder? What were the founding principles of this organization?
Okay, the founder is Dr. Uzwilezwe Hadebe. He is Imboni Yesizwe, not a prophet. He is Imboni, or sometimes we say Ikoko, somebody who's been given the ability to foresee things that are happening, and also is somebody who is able to converse or connect with izithunywa, meaning spiritual guides. Because we all know that nobody talks to God, but God speaks through izithunywa. And izithunywa or guides will actually speak to those who have been given the gift or have been bestowed the gift or ability to be able to talk to izithunywa, getting the messages that are supposed to come down to us as people. And if you look at us as Black people, we have what people will normally call traditions and cultures. But as a people, you have your spirituality that guides you in terms of what you have to do in life.
So when we talk about the universal reality of spirituality and what your founder, as you say, a member of izithunywa, has seen, particularly about where South Africa is 30 years into democracy and where it's going, what message is he receiving or giving?
Well, I won't be able to say what messages he receives, but what we know is that as he gets the messages and as we get the teachings, one thing that we understand that each and every nation will have its own spirituality. And central to that, you need to be able to be tolerant towards each other. More specifically, when we're going to the polls, peace, tolerance, and understanding are going to be pivotal cornerstones in order for us to see our democracy moving forward, and in order for people to respect each other and respect each and every party that we have in South Africa.
There's a reason, and I'm not asking you necessarily as the medium, but there must be a philosophy that is being espoused by the organization beyond the messages of peace and tolerance. South Africans find themselves, and I'm sure as many other societies, but particularly South Africans, find themselves at a crossroads, because vast majority are deflated at what they see as no material change to the circumstances pre-apartheid, or rather pre-democracy. So what message is being espoused to them, and what are you using as a clarion call to say, come and join us to mark this critical period of South Africa?
If I can look at it in a broader perspective, I'll just talk about South Africans. Each and every individual is spiritual, and each and every person is guided by their spiritual guides. So it becomes very important for one to understand what this spirituality means to you. It is not like something you put in a box, but it is something that is innate within each and every one of us. We need to understand that if you walk your spirituality path or your spiritual path, in all honesty, as a person who's been created, you are able to tap into every aspect of your life. It is not just a concept or a philosophy that says it only fixes one thing, but it is a way of life that we embrace as peoples of the world. Of course, in the context of where you come from. But from the context of Africa, we all know that each and every African have a way of worshiping, and you will see a lot of spirituality being practiced. Of course, it will be interpreted differently by different people who perhaps have forgotten or do not understand what it is that we are doing. But spirituality is pivotal to our lives, such that we know when it is, or at any time when we worship, we understand that as a person, you need to be connected with izithunywa, you need to be connected to your ancestors. You don't just do it by going to somebody saying, so what am I supposed to do with my ancestors or my spirituality? What you need to understand is we live in a spiritual world, and spiritual beings, okanye izithunywa, will be able to guide you accordingly.
I would like to focus on one concept, and that is of land, in line with the concept that you are expanding on. For instance, when you talk about spirituality, Africanism and its relationship with the environment, particularly land, is a very special one, and one of the stickler points, should I say, the thorn in the sides of our current democracy. So as a philosophy, as an organization, what are you saying, for instance, and how we can overcome one of these major sources of discontent in South Africa, particularly because for a lot of people it has resulted in their dignity being taken away, and especially when you talk then about ancestors, there's the issue of origin. The people who own the land in this country are not the majority of those who are born here, or rather whose ancestry was born here. Yeah. Okay.
We should understand one thing, that Africa in totality is the mother of spirituality. And if something is taken away from you, you then ask yourself, how did they take it? Did I allow them to take it? What is it that I gave up in order to get something that is foreign to me? I'll give you an example. If I say I am a spiritual person, I've got to be true to my path. If I have learned that I have as a Black people, and we decide for one reason or the other to forego that land for other things that look very attractive, who is to blame? It is for that reason that the founder of the Revelation Spiritual Home is saying to us as Africans and everybody else who deems themselves as Africans, to say, go back to who you truly are. Exercise your spirituality. You'll be able to keep what you have, because once you give it away, it's actually going to be very difficult. Yes, land is a very thorny subject. We find ourselves in South Africa in this situation that we are in. But at the end of the day, we have to ask ourselves critical questions to say, what is it that we did to enable other people to take our land?
Okay, I need to ask...
Were we forced to give our land away? Yes.
You can complete that sentence first before I ask you this next burning question that I have for you.
Okay, so we need to ask ourselves critical questions to say, are we the people we're supposed to be? Are we embracing our spirituality the way we're supposed to be, or are we mixing everything else that we come up with?
Okay.
And perhaps at the time when you're doing all those things, you do not know what the end result would be.
So that question,
and
if I need to
those, yes,
ask you this question, that question, if I were to point it to this generation of born frees, for instance, you spoke earlier on when you spoke about spirituality and what is innate. So if we're talking about political freedom, the current context in South Africa, that which is ours, that we inherited, or the foreign systems or practices which has now become a part of South African life and beliefs, what would you say is political freedom for this new generation, understanding it through the prism of spirituality and what is innate?
Okay, you're asking me a question about political freedom. I will respond on the line where I say, what is it that is important about our spiritual freedom? One thing that is important about our spiritual freedom is that we are able to genuinely express ourselves from the spirituality side, which each and every African or South African was born within. Perhaps along the way, we forgot those ways and decided to use things that are foreign to us. Hence, we find ourselves in this quagmire. However, if you can begin, all of us, retracing our spirituality paths, retracing our spirituality history, retracing the successes that Africans had before any other influence came in their environment, perhaps we could be talking a different language. And I do know that it is not a foregone thought, but it is a reality that once we begin to practice our spirituality, we'll start traversing the correct path to where we want to be successful Africans, and know what it is that gives us strength and knowledge and wisdom, so forth and so on.
Thembi Tulwana, thank you so much, Mama, for your time. Much appreciated. I'm sure there are a lot of people who'll be interested in hearing more. Unfortunately, we have run out of time. Thembi Tulwana is the Revelation Spiritual Home Upper House member.